Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 60 of the video series in which we program an entire video game from scratch in the C programming language. As usual, let's start by checking out the comments that we received since last time. I believe there are 2 or 3 comments that I really want to talk about. Okay, first comment says, take a look at this long link talking about the incompatibility warning you were getting when trying to compile with the address sanitizer activated. You should probably be fine with either using the default value or basic runtime checks or just suppressing the warning via pragma if you want to compile with the address sanitizer on. Okay, so if you remember from last time, there was a new feature introduced in the latest update to Visual Studio. It was address sanitizer, and as I mentioned in the previous video, everybody else already had address sanitizer, but it is good to see it coming to Visual Studio finally. However, we tried to turn it on and got some interesting results. Let's go ahead and fire up our solution here. And source. Okay. All right, here we are in our game.b.exe. There's another update available. It might be the update that fixes address sanitizer. I don't know. But anyway, so I've turned address sanitizer off. Where are you? Here it is. Enable address sanitizer. So if I turn that on, here's what I get. I'm going to turn it on for all configurations and all platforms. I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to try to just run the thing. Build errors. What's the build error? Oh yeah, it's incompatible with incremental. So let's go back. Or actually, let's just switch to, can I switch to release? Okay. So failed to load DLL. That's my problem. But what actually I was worried about was these. It's generating all of these exceptions. Access violation, writing location, and then when I would get to my first load library call, it would throw a heap corruption violation. And that's solely due to address sanitizer. If I turn address sanitizer off, I don't have that problem at all. So that's I still have that issue. So the last issue, the one that the commenter was referring to, which it's from last episode, it was telling me that it's incompatible with runtime checks, and I had to, let's see, it's in here somewhere. Code generation, yeah, basic runtime checks. You can do stack frames, uninitialized variables, or both, or default. Now, here's my problem is last time it was telling me that address sanitizer is not compatible with the runtime checks, so it was turning the runtime checks off. And it was throwing like 100 of those warnings. I wanted to turn that off, but I wasn't making the connection in my mind that default meant turned off. Right? So like I was like, there is no option to turn it off. I can do stack frames, variables, or both. But there's no off here. I didn't realize that default means off. And sure enough, if you turn that basic runtime checks to default, it does get rid of those warnings. But again, it's a moot point for us at this particular point because I can't run address sanitizer. It breaks my whole executable. So I'm leaving address sanitizer off for the time being. I'll just come back to it later. Okay. let's move on with the comments. Oh, by the way, I will show you my Twitter account. My tweet. Let's see, address. This is Visual C++, the Twitter account. He says address sanitizer is no longer experimental. And then I chimed in on his Twitter account. This is me. I said, hey, why does it generate so many of these warnings? This is the warning that I was trying to generate earlier. Runtime checks and address sanitizer is not currently supported, disabling runtime checks. So turns out you have to set it to default. And then I said, that's cool. It does get rid of those warnings, but now I have a bigger problem. Um, it breaks the game. So I had to leave address sanitizer turned off for now. Something, okay, so I did think of, or I did find something interesting that I want to try. Apparently, I did not know it, but apparently there is an extension for Visual Studio. So I'm going to click on extensions, manage extensions, and I believe there's an extension that I can install called font size. No? I guess not. Installed online marketplace, search for font size. Font sizer. An easy way to change the font sizes in the editor and Visual Studio environment. I'm going to give that a try, I guess. Your changes will be scheduled. Alright, I have to restart Visual Studio. Okay, I am installing the Font Sizer 2.0 Visual Studio extension. Waiting on the following processes to shut down before continuing in tasks. Okay, installation complete. Close. Let's go back to Visual Studio. Manage extensions. Installed. Font sizer. Okay, how does it work? How does it work? Here we go. Tools, font sizer, increase editor font sizes, increase environment font size. Aha! This is what I wanted. This is what I wanted. Font sizer, increase environment font size. Nice. So the idea is I'm increasing the font size of the Solution Explorer. I'm increasing the font size of the menus for you, dear viewers, to make it easier for you to see this. Because I know my resolution is a little bit large, so it might be kind of hard for you to see. I've always been able to increase the this font size here, but I've never been able to increase the font size of all the other stuff. The Solution Explorer, the output down here in this window. So hopefully now, from this point forward, it will be a little bit easier for you to see. So cool. And it looks like this automatically works across instances of Visual Studio, so that's cool. Everything looks good. All right, moving on. What is the next comment? Okay, this comment is a multi-part comment. So glad to have finally caught up with the series. A few questions. 1. Would it be better to simply monitor the directory for the file replacement so that you don't have to look for the temp file and rename it, etc.? Read directory changes, for example. So what this commenter is talking about is in WinMain, which is right where we are, in our where we load our game code. What we've been working on for the past 3 episodes. All right, so we're in this block here. So every 2 seconds, what do? We check for the existence of GameCode.temp, and if the file exists, then we attempt to basically load game code from it, which includes unloading the existing DLL file, which unlocks it from a file system perspective, and then we rename or overwrite the DLL file using the temp file, and then we reload the new DLL file and reload all of the functions from that DLL file, so that we have this sort of dynamic code loading capability. Commenter asks, would it not be smarter or more elegant or better in some way to basically do something else here, like read directory changes? It's a really cool API. Let me go ahead and look it up on MSDN. Read directory changes. Retrieves information that describes the changes within the specified directory. The function does not report changes to the specified directory itself. So essentially, what you do is you have to, allocate a buffer, and you supply the buffer to this thing, and it provides you with a snapshot of the directory. When you call it for the first time, it just tells you here's exactly the contents of the directory, and then the idea is we would call read directory changes over and over again in a loop, just like what we're doing here. But each time the read directory changes function will give you only the things that have changed since the last time you called read directory changes. So that's a really useful API. It can be called both synchronously and asynchronously, which, if you wanted to call it asynchronously, you would basically set up a callback function, and the system would essentially call you back at any time whenever the directory had actually changed. So that would be really cool, but I just don't really see why we need to do that. I mean, it kind of feels needlessly or unnecessarily complicated at this point, especially considering what we have right now works. It works. And so I don't think I want to change it until I think of anything, or unless, someone can let me know of any reason why that would be better, or like what benefits that would get me that I don't have with this system. Seems to work fine. So, yeah, I just don't think I need to. Speaking of which, since we're on this topic, there is one other change that I made. I used to have this issue where the game, when I execute the game, in fact, let me go ahead and just run it right now. Okay, the game is running. I launched the game under the debugger, right? So now let me go ahead and launch Process Explorer right here. I'm going to use this little crosshair thingy to go straight to the gameb.exe, and you'll see that gameb.exe was launched as a child of the msvsmon.exe process. And I feel like sometimes it's not always this. Sometimes it's launched under like dev. Sometimes it's launched with like that guy, devinv.exe, as a parent. I don't know. I don't know why it would be like that sometimes and not other times. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Go to image. Go to the current directory. So every process, when you launch any process on Windows, it has a concept of a current working directory. Actually, I suppose this applies to any sort of Linux and Unix program as well. They all have this concept of a current working directory. So Problem is whenever the game would be launched under the debugger, it would inherit the current working directory from the debugger. But when I would launch the game independently of the debugger, which is to say, go here, go here, go here, and just launch the game like that, then the current working directory would be different. It would be that directory and not the directory of the solution file that was inherited from Visual Studio. Essentially, I would have this issue where I would compile GameCode.dll and it would go into a directory and the game would never find it because it was searching in the wrong directory because the current working directory of the process was wrong. So I fixed that by going here. If you go and right click on the solution and go to properties and go to debugging right here. Let me expand this. The larger font size I think is going to be much nicer now for you to see while you're watching this on YouTube. But anyway, go to the debugging tab. Essentially what I did is I changed the working directory to this, which I copied from the general tab. I basically just I said my thought was I want the output directory, which is this, to be the same as the application's working directory. I want those to be the same. So now I no longer have the issue of the executable's current working directory being different depending on whether I'm launching it under the debugger or not. So that's fixed. All right, what else do we have? We're going back to this comment, part 2. He says, will the program use threads at all? And if so, how will the DLL reload be affected? Another really good question. So, the answer to the thread, to will the game use threads, is technically right now the only place I have used threads in this game is right here in the asset loading thread, which, as you recall, when the game first launches, it launches a separate thread. Like if your main thread is right here, it also launches asset loading thread in parallel, so that all of the graphics loops and the sound loops and the control loops and all this kind of stuff is free to continue going while the asset loading thread runs in the background at the same time in parallel. When the asset loading thread is done, then it goes away and all the assets are loaded and the main thread is then able to continue. And that has worked very well for us up until this point. I think it's pretty much the only place where we're going to use threads in this game is just right here, this one little thread. I think if we need to use another thread in the future, we might, but so far this is the only one that I have planned, is this asset loading thread, which we finished a long time ago. So yeah, technically there is one other place where threads are used, and I will go ahead and launch the game again to show you. All right, the game is running. Let me launch Process Explorer. Click on GameB.exe and go to Threads. Now you'll recall that I just told you we essentially only have 2 threads, right? So then why do you see these dozens of threads here? And the answer to that is essentially X audio, which, as you can see here, it shows right here that these threads, they start with xaudio2.dll bang audio create with all this kind of stuff. So when we loaded xaudio2, we basically imported a bunch of stuff. Xaudio2 creates all of these worker threads in the background that we had nothing to do with. We have no control over these worker threads. Um, we just let them happen in the background. And the reason why is because Xaudio 2 is designed to be a simple asynchronous API. We just all we have to do is we just asynchronously throw a memory buffer at Xaudio 2. Xaudio 2 will play the audio on a background thread, and we can just continue on our merry way. We don't have to worry about it. So that's the only other place we use threads in our executable, in our program, in our game. And we don't even really use these. These are just Xaudio 2 is creating these in the background. We don't really have any say about them. Um, so I'll just leave those alone for now. The follow up to that question is, how will the DLL reload be affected? I would say that is yet to be determined, because we are just getting started with the whole idea of having our game code in a separate place, in a separate DLL file. When you release a DLL and then reload the DLL and reload all those functions, those memory addresses are going to be randomized every single time. So if you had any data that was basically any data that was held in the address space of that DLL is going to be invalidated whenever you unload and reload the DLL. So we're gonna have to come up with some way. We're either gonna have to keep all of the data here in this project in GameB.exe, keep all the data over here, and in the GameCode.dll we'll just have just code and no no data, no like globals or any of that kind of stuff. um, or B, we're going to have to come up with some way of persisting all of the data across DLL reloads. And so that might involve basically creating creating a buffer here in GameB.exe in our processes memory to hold all of this persistent game state, this data and this state, that information that we want to persist across DLL reloads, perform the DLL reload, and then jam all of the data back into uh, you know the address space of the DLL. That sounds daunting to me, and it sounds error prone and possibly, flaky, um, like it could break easily. So I am a little bit worried about that, but we are not going to necessarily worry about that until we get there. Okay, moving on. Part 3. Would you put a list of all the tools that you have used into the repo README? The ASCII drawing tool, the world map tile tool, the BMPX extension, and the sound effects tool are all great resources to know about, but they are hard to find unless you know the specific place to find them. Great. All right, that's a great idea, and in fact, I've already done that. If you go to GitHub, well, I'm going to open the GitHub client because I haven't committed it yet, but if you look at the changes to README, I did put an extra tools section in here. So I've got paint.net here. I've got the 32-bit per pixel BMPX extension for paint.net. I have the tiled map editor, Audacity, ASCII Flow, BFXer, and ASAPrite. All of those things will be going into the README after this episode. Okay, I think that's all. Oh, no, it isn't. Here's another comment. Hey Ryan, thanks for taking the time to do this series. I made a batch script that lets people build using any IDE they want and follow along. Just place build.bat in the game B folder and overwrite copy assets.bat. If you want to use VS Code, put the JSON files inside a .vs Code folder. Here are the files. Let me click on this. Okay, so this is from this person, Helium. Definitely thankful for this. So He wrote this for us. It's a build script. Build.bat. So essentially, he wrote this batch script that will help us build the project from the command line. And as you'll notice, it is using it's using cl.exe, which in my terminal, let's see. cl.exe. So cl.exe is Microsoft's version of their command line version of their compiler, basically. I guess CL probably stands for compiler and linker because it does both. So as you can see, I have multiple versions of it: host 64, x64. I also have a host 64, x86, etc., etc. So we haven't used any command line compilers on this project up until this point. That being said, I fully endorse and support the idea of doing so if you want. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to copy that, and I am going to go back to the solution directory. I'm going to make a build.bat. That is misspelled. Okay, build.bat, edit, paste, save. It's really cool that he did all this stuff for us. When you compile on the command line, you essentially have, each separate C file is going to be its own, what do they call it, translation unit. And then you have to link them all together. The compiler turns them into OBJ files, and then you have to use the linker to link all the OBJ files together into an executable. So he's done all this stuff for us. He also noticed that when you do this, you have to link your libraries explicitly with the command line. User32.lib, GDI32.lib, all these sorts of Windows libraries that we already had this set up in Visual Studio. But that seems to be it. So I forgot to mention, to make cl.exe easy to use, you need to set up some environment variables, and this is what the Visual Studio developer command prompt is for. You can launch it from the start menu if you have Visual Studio installed. This actually also just runs the infamous vcvars.bat batch file. It adds a whole bunch of environment variables and maybe various other bits and bobs that you need in order to be able to just simply run something like cl.exe from the command prompt. Copy assets.bat. How is his different from mine? He has, he wrote, okay, he wants me to replace my copy assets.bat with his copy assets.bat. And I'm not sure why. So let me look at the current one. Delete assets, dot assets. Looks about the same. Looks about the same. all except for he copies assets.dat into one additional place. So I'm sorry if this is wrong, but I think the only thing you added to copy assets.bat was that one line. So I'm just going to add that one line to mine. Otherwise, everything else is identical, right? I think so. Okay, I'll leave that be. And now he also supplies these JSON files for VS Code. So I don't use VS Code, but if you do, then more power to you. I certainly am not going to stop you from using VS Code if you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and create these files. I don't really see the harm in doing so if it helps you use VS Code. Launch.json, edit, paste. And I think these are highlighted in red because I think according to the official spec for the JSON file format, I don't think JSON actually supports comments. But I'm sure most JSON parsers understand comments, so there we go. There's that. And also tasks.json. Copy. Actually, let me just make here tasks.json. Okay, save. Save and close. You can see now that I have all this new stuff to commit to the repository, which is nice. Very nice, very nice. Build.bat. So again, like I said, I don't use VS Code, so I probably won't be using most of this. But I support you using this, so I'm cool with it. If you have any problems with these, though, let me know. I'll try to fix them, I guess. So, awesome. Thank you very much for the contribution. I really appreciate it, and I hope that it helps others who are using VS Code or who want to build via the command line. All right. I'm just seeing if I have any other interesting comments, and I don't think I do. I think we're done with comments. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. Close all of these things. Okay, here we go. See if there's any. Let's see, fixed current working directory. We did that. Got rid of the warning messages from address sanitizer by changing runtime checks to default. We did that, but then we had to turn address sanitizer back off because it still doesn't work. Oh yeah, there's something else I forgot to mention is we brought the game B directory environment variable back, which is this right here. Let me show you. So I'm in the command line. I'll just type set, but in PowerShell that doesn't work. Yeah, it's something like env path, right? Env path split. Right, so these are my environment variables. Let's see if I have a game B directory. There you go. So game B directory, you need to set this environment variable. It's also in the README. It points to basically the game B repository, and the place where I use it is in the GameCode build scripts that we made last time. These right here, these guys, copy DLL32 debug.bat. If you look at it, if you look at these, you'll see that I do reference the environment variables there. So you'll have to you will have to set the GameCode.dll environment variable on your machine. But that's all. All right, talked about that. I did get one interesting comment about about the options menu. Apparently, this is something that confused or was confusing to some people, at least to this one person. Essentially, if you go to the options menu and you want to change the sound effects volume, the left and right directions. So like the A key, the D key, the left arrow, and the right arrow on my keyboard, they don't do anything. The only way to change these is with the Enter button, and I should make that work with the arrows too, shouldn't I? I think that's an easy fix. So let's go ahead and knock that out. So it'll be in process player input, yes? Main.c. Oh, I lost it. No, I didn't. It's right here. Process player input. Right there. Since we're already testing for game input left and right, we already have the key state, so all we have to do now is go to, what we need to do is go to options screen.c. We then need to go to process player input underscore option screen. Okay, if up key, okay, choose key. So I essentially just want to change this logic from it will work with the choose key, which is enter, which is the enter key, or this condition, I'm going to add this condition as well, game input dot, no, that doesn't work, does it? That doesn't work. What we're going to have to do is something like this. Left key is down and not left key was down, right? It's been so long since I've messed with these menus that I have forgotten how to use them, so this is a good refresher for me actually. Let's go to optionscreen.h. I wonder why the option screen menu is not in here, because I have them all in menus.h maybe. Tiles. No, it's in the C file. Okay, if the currently selected menu item is sound effects volume, so I'm basically just trying to, on the fly, come up with a good way of determining which menu item is currently selected. And I don't have to do it this way, but I feel like doing it this way is the best in terms of readability because it allows me to, well, it allows me to do two things. It allows me to change the index of this menu item. Like, say, if sometime later down the road I wanted to add a new item to the options screen, well, then the array index of sound effects volume might change. It might not always be at array index 0. So, by doing this string comparison, I'm allowing for the situation where later on down the road the array index might change, or B, I'm also making it clearer what I mean, basically, right? Or what I'm actually trying to accomplish. Because whenever you look at this line of code, you're going to see the label sound effects volume. So you're going to know right off the bat what this means. Whereas if I just said, if array index equals 0, then do this. But you wouldn't immediately know by looking at it, well, what's array index 0? It could be anything, right? I mean, you wouldn't immediately know that I was talking about sound effects volume. So I feel like that's probably the right thing to do. I think. Let me go look at menu item, sound effects volume. Right. So here is the action that is taken. It just cycles through it. So, I'm definitely going to have to change this logic. I'm just trying to decide how I want to do it. I guess let's just call that, and we'll put the logic in that function. Okay, it's the same for sound effects volume and music volume. Screen size. Play sound. So now I'm thinking maybe I should add a parameter to this function that lets us say, am I increasing the volume or am I decreasing the volume? Okay, forget all of this. Forget all of that. Let's go back to our original idea. Alright, so if the choose key is down or the left key is down, or for that matter, that's not what I meant, or for that matter, the right key is down and it was not down on the last frame, in any of those cases, the idea now is that I'm no longer. This is going to work for basically any of these menu items because it's the way for me to write the least amount of code, right? That seems like the right thing to do. Now I'll go down to here, and here is where I'm going to write this. If key is down and not okay, so if the left key was down, then we are going to decrease the volume. Else if actually, let me think. Okay, so if either the right key was down or the choose key was down, in either of those cases, we're going to increase the volume. Okay, so we're going to say if which I'm translating it to an unsigned integer, which for some reason I don't know why I'm doing that. So I'm going to remove that cast. I'm going to say if volume times 10 is less than 0. No, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. I'm going to just do that. Right? It should be 1.0f. Okay, time to see if that is correct. let me put this on speakers so I can hear it. Seems to work. Seems to work well. So let's do the exact same thing for music now. Essentially, we're just copying this code, right? Putting it here. Okay, so if the left key is down, what we're going to do is take that away. Take that away. Music, 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 music. Looks good. Let's do screen size. If GPerformanceData.current scale factor is greater than 1, because 1 is the minimum, yes? Current scale factor. Okay, so the left key will make the screen size smaller as long as the scale factor is greater than 1. But well, we want it to wrap around, don't we? Let's just do this. Just to make it easier on myself, I'm just going to decrement scale factor unconditionally if the left key is down, but if the choose key is down or the right key is down, then we are going to unconditionally increment. And we're going to say if GPerformanceData.current scale factor is less than 1, then we are going to make GPerformanceData dot current scale factor equal to G performance data dot max scale factor. I want it to wrap around. I want it to work the same way as the volume and the the volume sliders. I want it to wrap around. Okay. Just remove that. Okay, if G performance data dot current scale factor is greater than max scale factor, then I want to make G performance data dot current scale factor equal to 1. Okay, I think that ought to work. Let's go find out. Nope. There we go. Extra equal sign in there. Oh wait, sorry. It's not what I wanted to do. Options. Okay, that seems to work fine. Now that that's fixed, right? We did that. Done. Now I kind of want to move it into our I want to move everything that we just did with the option screen. I want to move that into the DLL because it's game specific code, right? I am not sure how easy this is going to be. Okay, let's get rid of testfunc01. We don't need it anymore. What do I want to replace it with? All right. Let me start with a function in main.c. Let's see if I can move anything from main.c into the DLL, because that's what I really want to do, right? What do I have here? that is platform independent. It's just game code. Okay. Guess we got to start somewhere. So let's start with Overworld and see what happens. So I'm over here in GameCode.dll now. I'm going to make a C file, overworld.c. Make sure that I have the capitalization consistent, overworld.c, overworld.c. Add. Okay. I'm also going to be adding an overworld.h, overworld.h header file. Add that. Okay. Let's go back to game B. Overworld. Process player input. Okay, this is a good place to start. Since there's only 2 lines in this function, you would think it would be pretty easy to start converting this, transplanting this from this solution over to GameCode.dll. So let's go ahead and grab it, cut it out, go over here to GameCode, go over here to overworld.c, paste it. Copy that, go to overworld.h, make a function declaration for it. Now what we don't have is the game state. Interesting. Let's go ahead and take it out of overworld.h. I think that was in the wrong place. I had this in main.h. I think it should have been in overworld.h, since the only time a random monster encounter can happen is in the overworld, right? Anyway. Okay, where do I hold the game state? It's going to be in main.h. Now I think the only possibility is to have this enum in both places for now. Eventually I would like to get to a place where I can take this enum and have it be only in GameCode.dll and not in anywhere in GameB.exe, but for right now I think coexistence is the only possibility. So right now it's in main.h. So let's put it in main.h over here. Header files, new item, header file, main.h. Game state. Okay, include main.h. Okay, I think the only way to make this happen now is I need to supply some pointers. So we'll just say I need to supply, a pointer to previous game state and in out, pointer to current game state, which source annotation language I think only exists in Windows.h, so I've got to go back here. Let's go back to game B. Now, where did I include Windows.h? Was it in main.c or main.h? Main.h. Windows API goes in main.h. Okay, 0 errors, no warnings, and that's just because of Windows.h is the only reason I get those warnings. Push code. Wait. Main.h. Up. We're just temporarily disabling warnings because of the Windows API. Doesn't compile cleanly. I mean, it compiles, it just doesn't compile without generating warnings. Okay, now I need to remember to export this thing. And in fact, let's see. Random monster encounter. Random monster encounter can go. Test Funko 1 needs to be deleted. Okay, now at this point we go back to GameB.exe. We need to first go to load GameCode, which is current entire solution. Load GameCode. Here we go. Now I'm going to change this. I need to change this to Random Monster Encounter. I can see how this could get away from us very easily, so I might need a better way to keep track of all this. It can get really messy. Alright, test func 01. Right. Main.h. I'm basically just replacing test func 01 with random monster encounter in this function declaration. There. Except for this part where it needs to take I need to make sure this signature is the same. Previous game state. Current game state. Right? In, out. No. Okay. It was right. It just takes a while. That obviously can go. We don't use test func 01 anymore. And then this, oh, right. Cool. Here we go. Random monster encounter. G previous game state and G current game state. Okay, now, moment of truth is, do our random monster encounters work correctly now? So the random monster encounter function, we moved it to the GameCode.dll. I don't necessarily like. I definitely don't like having to maintain all of these data structures in two separate projects now. That's definitely not my long-term intent. Um, I'm just basically just trying to make some things work right now. So let's see if this works. Let's make sure my volume is turned down. Yeah. So the idea is the random monster encounter percentage should be around 10%. So every time I walk, it should be around a 10% chance that I run into a monster. And it did. It looks like it worked. It did change the game state. I hit escape and I went back to regular Overworld. The next bug I need to fix is the battle music doesn't stop whenever I exit the battle game state. So let me go ahead and fix that real quick. Let me go to that is cool though. At least that we did get we did at least export the code, the logic to the external DLL. So it's just the only downside is now we have to like maintain separate copies of things like data structure definitions, enum definitions, and things like this in both solutions. And eventually, once we get all of the code moved out into GameCode.dll, we won't have to do that anymore. I don't think. Yeah, so that the idea is hopefully that we won't have to do that long term. I'm just for now while we're in the process of transplanting all of this code, all this existing code from gameb.exe to gamecode.dll, um, we have sort of this coexistence issue that we have to deal with. Um, Let me go fix that music real quick. Right. Okay, so I just basically added a stop music to that. Okay, here's our random monster encounter. I hit escape. Simple as that. Okay, now I think the next bug that we needed to fix was if I am in the battle state and I turn on this debug text back here, you can see how the text is messed up. It's because I'm not refreshing the screen between each frame in the battle state. Whereas when in the overworld game state, I am refreshing the screen on every frame. So that's why the text does not look messed up. So that should be super simple to fix. It's basically just a mem set, right? I forget what the name. I forget what our name was. G drawing surface or canvas or something. Let me find another. Let me go to Overworld. Let me go to Draw Overworld. Oh, we didn't have to refresh the screen here because I blit the entire bitmap on every frame. So how do we want to fix this? I guess it's not as simple as a fix as I thought it would be. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe I just copy that. I go to battle and I just let's see, where exactly am I drawing it after all of this? Draw a window. Okay, so it goes right here. Brightness adjustment. Let's copy it out of here, put it in battle.c for brightness adjustment. Okay, so at 10 frames in, brightness adjustment goes to -128. At 20 frames in, brightness adjustment goes to -64. At 30 frames in, it goes to -32. And then at 40 frames in, it goes to 0, which is normal brightness. Is that it? Okay, let's give that a whirl. I don't know if I like it that the player disappears or not. Maybe I do like it. All right. Well, that's definitely progress. What would you say we did today? Primarily, the main thing we did today, I mean, we did a lot of small things, but the main thing that we did today was that we moved one function into our GameCode.dll, which was RandomMonsterEncounter. And that's it. It works pretty well though. So I think that this, paves the way for things to go a lot faster in the future. As I said before, the main thing to focus on right now is, or I should say, my main pain point with this right now is the sharing of data between the two modules, between GameB.exe and GameCode.dll. Uh, like I was saying, having to duplicate all those uh, enum definitions and data structure definitions and things like this. That's something that I don't want to do, but I think that that is just something that we're going to have to tolerate while we're in the process of transplanting as much code as possible into GameCode.dll. My master plan for this, my final vision for this concept is basically the only thing that will be left in GameB.exe is going to be the platform specific stuff. The Windows API calls are going to be basically the only thing left in GameB.exe, whereas GameCode.dll is going to have all of the portable C code and stuff that all of that stuff that is essentially cross-platform compatible, that you could compile for any platform that supports the C language. Um, as far as the sharing of data between GameCode.dll and GameB.exe, we might have to come up with something different. There, we might have to. We probably need to simplify things. Maybe just uh, making a large chunk of game memory that contains basically everything, instead of having all these separate data structures that have to be defined in both places and all these different enums that have to be defined in both places. That will be something that we're definitely going to have to work on in the future. But looks like we are significantly over time for today, so that is all I have for today. As always, thank you guys very much for watching. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, please don't hesitate to leave those questions or comments in the comment section. It doesn't have to be about this video. It can be about any video, any topic. It doesn't matter. One of my favorite things about this project is interacting with you guys. So please do ask questions, because I like answering questions. Secondly, don't forget that we have a companion GitHub repository on GitHub, which, as you see right here, we have a companion GitHub repo that I keep updated alongside these episodes so that you can clone this repository and follow along at home. So, if you like what you saw today, and if you want to see me continue developing this game, then please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends. And that is all I have. So again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, see ya.